Hey everyone, so today we are going to be replacing the front suspension top mount. This is the strut support that goes on the top of your McPherson strut. I'm replacing this because mine is squeaking something fierce, so I went ahead and bought a brand new one from Toyota. And so this is what it looks like. It has the 4 screws. I believe this is for the later generation Mark 1B MR2. I think the earlier generations had only 3. But go ahead, you can buy one of these just for just under $200. And what was happening was mine was just so worn out that it was squeaking very loudly, and it was just really annoying while I was driving. So I thought I'd go ahead and replace it and show you guys how to do that. So let's go to the car, get the tools, and do this job. So the first thing we want to do is loosen up the lug nuts on the front wheels. If we jack up the car before we do this, it's going to be a really quite challenging to get these lug nuts off. So when the car is still on the ground, go ahead, take your breaker bar or your impact wrench and just loosen them up. You don't have to take them off. And this is just going to make it easier for us to get the wheel off after we jack up the car. Make sure your parking brake is on and your car's in gear so it doesn't roll. So there we go. Now we're going to go ahead and jack up the front wheel, just this one side, because we're going to be replacing this strut mount right here on the driver's side today. And we'll take this wheel off and then we'll get at the suspension and get at that strut mount. So let's go ahead and get that done. So we have the front driver's side wheel off. The car is on jack stand. Everything is nice and solid and secure. So now we're going to go ahead and get this McPherson strut out. And so to do this, we have to remove the U-clip that's holding the brake line to the strut. So you just have to pop that out with a hammer and chisel. It's just going to hammer it out and it'll pop out. And then there's 2 main bolts which hold the wheel carrier, the wheel hub here, to the strut. There's 2 large bolts right here. So we're going to go ahead and remove these. And one thing to note is that there's an adjuster, sort of washer shim here, that has a line. And this is used to adjust your camber, I believe. So that's the angle of the suspension. So if you want to keep this to your original specifications, you want to mark a line either with a white paint pen or just with a metal scribe so that you can line this line up with your wheel hub later when you reinstall the suspension. So let's go ahead and do that with a paint pen. So we're going to take those 2 bolts off, remove this U-clip, and then we're going to have to move to the top of the suspension and remove these 4 nuts. And once we have everything out, the suspension should be able to drop out and we can replace this strut top mount. So let's go ahead and get that done. So we've gone ahead and removed the small U-clip here. Just tapped it out with a hammer and chisel. The one thing that I forgot is that this clip here that holds the brake line to the strut, you actually need to bend these in opposite directions so you can actually get the line out. This is for when you want to remove your suspension but not actually remove your brake line. Otherwise this thing won't come out. You're going to have to undo your brake line, bleed your brake line, and then refill it and all that stuff. You don't want to do that. So just bend this clip. You can bend the 2 tabs here in opposite directions, and then your brake line will just slide out. So we've removed the 2 large bolts. You can see them here. One thing to note is this is the second time I've done this because I've already rebuilt my suspension before. So taking these bolts off wasn't a huge deal. But I do remember that the first time I did this was a really big pain in the butt. So just keep at it. You can use your breaker bar on one side and a wrench on the other, or an impact gun if you can get it in here, but it's going to be a pain in the butt. Do your best, and my advice here would be when you reinstall these, put some anti-seize, the copper anti-seize, on these bolts. Taking these off the second time was actually quite easy. Just save yourself that hassle. So those are removed. We can now bang out this suspension here. Looks like one more thing we're going to have to just undo is the end link here to the anti-roll bar. So that will just be one connection at the back of the suspension. But we can take that off after we bang this, this connection out. And then the 4 nuts at the top, and we're good to go. I do apologize, I kind of lied. There was one last connection you have to remove, and that's the end link connection to the anti-sway bar. This is also going to be a very difficult connection to remove if you've never done it before, just because it's going to be rusted up, it's going to be solid. I've actually replaced my end links with the 2S ones, so they're nice and clean, they're easy to get off, but we need to remove that connection to let, free up the suspension here. The top anti-strut tower bar, everything just fell through, and you can see here the end link connected to the strut. So what we will be removing is this center nut. We're going to use an impact gun to do that. Then this strut top will come out, and you can hear it. It's a little bit loose, and that rubber rubbing sound is what was really getting on my nerves. So we're going to go ahead and replace this whole thing with the brand new unit that I bought from Toyota. So you can see we got it off with the impact gun. It just slides right off that center shaft. We're going to reuse the nut, and we have the old and new strut top mounts. You can see that the old one has a dust cover, sort of this foam rubbery dust cover that we're going to reuse. And you can see the new one, those ball bearings, everything's pre-greased. So everything's ready to go. We are going to reuse this dust seal because it didn't come, the new unit didn't come with one. So we're going to swap that over, then we're just going to reinstall everything, tighten down the center nut, and reinstall it right back in the car just the way we took it off. And that's as easy as that. So let's get it done. So everything's back in place, nice and tight. One thing to note, the most difficult part of this job was getting the end link back into the sway bar. Because the sway bar is under tension, it's going to be wanting to go much higher than the end of the end link. So what I ended up having to do is use a pair of pliers and pull the sway bar down in order to get that end of the end link in. So I had to really sort of fiddle around and pull the sway bar down, sort of clamp it here, pull it down, and then get that end link bolt through so I could tighten it all up. Put the U-link back in for the brake line. We're going to tighten up these large bolts holding the strut to the wheel carrier. Make sure to line up your line here with one you made before. And then the last step is we're going to tighten down everything, make sure everything's nice and tight, and then put the wheel back on and lower the car. Once the car is back on the ground, we're going to take the impact gun and tighten that one large 19mm bolt at the top of the strut housing. That's the one that connects the strut housing with the gas charged strut in here. So we may want to make sure that one's nice and tight, but we're going to do that after we lower everything back on the ground. So let's go ahead and finish this up and be done. What I want to do, I think I made a video about this before, is tighten down this center bolt. And we're going to use the impact gun to do that. A trick here, you can also sit on the car and put more weight down on the wheels and compress that suspension. And that's going to resist this from turning. But the impact gun should do a nice job. Tighten down the 4 nuts. Once that's good to go, we're done. It's as easy as that. Hopefully the squeak will go away and everything's nice and tight. And this is because it has to do with safety. So I have to state here, the only reason I was able to take off this strut top mount so easily is because I have lowering springs on my car. So these springs, when the suspension is out of the car, are actually not in compression at all. So when I remove the strut top, it just slides off and the spring is unchanged. For the stock springs, they're under compression when you remove them. So if you were to remove the strut top without having any safety precautions, this thing would just fly off because that spring under compression would just expand quickly and shoot this off quite dangerously. So there is a tool that we use called a strut spring compressor. It's a fairly inexpensive tool, and I'll get it for you here. So we have it here. This is a strut spring compressor, and essentially what it is these two arms that grab different areas of the spring, and we have one on each side of the spring, and we compress it. So we just tighten this down, we move these two together, and we compress that spring. So we actually pre-compress the spring so that when we remove the strut top mount, it doesn't fly off. The spring doesn't expand quickly and shoot this off at us. So when I took off my stock springs, I had to use the strut spring compressor. $40, great safety tool. But because I had those lowering springs, I didn't have to use these, and this thing came off nice and easy. So I just had to include this at the end of the video because safety stuff is very important, and I highly recommend that you use a set of strut spring compressors. They're going to come in handy in the future anyway, so just go ahead and get yourself a pair. Alright guys, good luck, have fun.